This is the Sacred Business Podcast, a show for spiritual women identifying entrepreneurs and leaders. I am Sora Suriano. On this show, you'll meet inspiring guests, get some business tips, experience sacred practices, and listen to my personal lessons as a business owner. As a transformational business coach, powerful medicine woman, inspirational speaker, fire igniter, heart whisperer, and world traveler, I've helped hundreds of women around the world heal their stories and transform their sacred businesses. It's time for us to claim our rightful and equitable place in entrepreneurship through scaling our business efforts. You are worthy, divine sister. This is episode 14. Meet Jolinda Johnson, one of our very own Sacred Business Mastermind guest mentors. Today, I have the pleasure of giving you full access to her wisdom. Now, we go further into her profound teachings in our Sacred Business Mastermind and training. Jolinda Johnson is a women's health coach who helps female coaches, creatives, and entrepreneurs master their hormones so they can master their lives. She combines her experience as a certified life coach by Beautiful You Life Coaching Academy and a certified holistic health coach through Institute of Integrative Nutrition to support her clients in fulfilling their unique missions with sustainable energy, mental clarity, and feminine flow. She has been featured on the cover of Inspired Coach magazine and was nominated for the Beautiful You Life Coaching Academy CEO Shine Award in 2017. While born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, she has called Barcelona, Spain, her home for nearly a decade. In addition to coaching, she is a single mom with a 4-year-old son and is grateful every day that she finally figured out what it means to be happy and live life on her own terms. Hello, Sacred Business Masterminders. We are back here with another guest, and today we have Jolinda Johnson. How are ya?
I'm great, Sora. How are you?
I'm doing well. So we've already had a really nice conversation prior to this, and I'm so excited around the things that we're going to go into. And so we token to this happy hormones, happy entrepreneur. But even before we go into the hormones, because I think this will go underneath that, as an entrepreneur, we know that most of the pressure we put is onto ourselves. Because we are the face of our business. We are the one who is trying to make the money. We're the one who is putting our voice out there. And it could be really stressful.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering if you can first share what actually is stress and how can we understand if we are stressed or not? Because sometimes it's really sneaky.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think this is one of the things that really needs to be talked about more is that stress is not just feeling stressed out.
Yes.
There's emotional stress, of course, but there's also stress that's coming from your diet in the form of inflammation, stress that's coming from your environment in the form of, environmental toxins, stress that comes from feeling isolated in your work and not establishing those really beneficial and supportive relationships that you need as a solopreneur, especially. Stress from not spending enough time in nature and seeing yourself as a small component in this beautiful universe that we live in. And also, I think I should add stress from a lack of spirituality and connection with yourself and your higher self. For me, those are all forms of stress that are afflicting us.
I think that's a great way. Yeah, that was a really clear way to identify what stress is. And you're right. Most of the time, what you think about stress is the feeling of stress when there's a whole slew of components that are really underlying it even before sometimes the actual feeling of stress. So based on that, can you share a little bit about when you identify those different categories, what can we do to be a bit proactive? Or when we are feeling really, really stressed, what are the things we can do to help start really alleviating it and knowing the points of where it's stemming from?
Well, I think you're talking about the foundation, really basic. One of the basic things we can do is get enough sleep. And that's something that we often tend to skimp on as entrepreneurs because we are always connected, we're always on, and it's really hard to put down the devices at night. And a lot of times what happens, because looking at blue light late at night affects our melatonin. When you look at a screen even an hour before bedtime, that reduces the amount of melatonin you have to fall asleep at the right time and to stay asleep. And eventually what can happen is your sleep and awake cycle can get flipped so that you, this is a really typical scenario. It's 10 p.m. when you should be winding down, but all of a sudden you get this second wind and you think, oh, I have energy now to do all the things that I didn't get done. So I'll just stay up. I'll just push myself a little more. Yeah. Midnight rolls around, and instead of heading to bed, you're wired. You might feel physically tired, but your brain is wide awake.
Right.
Then you might even push it to 3 o'clock in the morning before you actually fall asleep. And in some cases, you need to wake up at 7 or 8, and you've only had 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and you're exhausted. And so then you get into this vicious cycle of, okay, I'm exhausted, so I'm going to drink coffee to wake up. Your body is in a state of stress at that point.
Yeah. Because
it hasn't had enough sleep sleep first and foremost is our time to restore, to release toxins, to release neurotoxins from the brain, to integrate everything that's happened throughout the day. And so when we're only getting 4 or 5 hours, we need 7 minimum. When we only get 4 or 5 hours, then it's really a domino effect, because our bodies sense that we are in, survival mode. And so then that puts stress on our adrenal glands, that raises our cortisol levels. It affects our food choices. A lot of women say, I really want to eat better, but I'm always craving sugar.
Right.
And, craving sugar can be for a number of reasons, but if you're like the woman I'm just describing, it's because your blood sugar is imbalanced and you need a quick hit of energy, and you think, right, sugar to keep going, and actually you end up crashing even more. Right. So it really is, not getting enough sleep will set you up for a number of choices throughout the day that are not beneficial. And, I keep harping on sleep because it's just one of the things that everyone needs to do.
Totally. You can't continue on without any sleep.
You can't, but, as entrepreneurs, and especially as coaches and healers and people who are constantly in contact with clients, we need to have mental clarity.
Yeah.
It's also when you're stressed, something that people might not know, when you're stressed, you're really priming your brain to look for, to be very narcissistic, because you're on alert. You're on high alert. What's coming at me? Why am I in danger? So you're very self-focused. You're not other-focused. And you'll make decisions based on how you can keep yourself going, not how you can serve others.
I love that. Yes. Absolutely.
And getting a good night's sleep is one of the first things you can do to prevent that.
Look at all the things that happens when you don't get sleep. Like, we know this and we don't. Like, we forget all the time. I love sleep. And so I'm not a late sleeper, but I do notice when I am not getting enough sleep. Like, I wake up more often, or I get up really early. Even though I'm an early riser, I'm getting up way earlier than I should be, so I'm not getting my 7 hours. And so I see when there's that off balance, even though I'm not ever like a midnight or 3 a.m.er. My body should down at about 8. So.
Well, a lot of times what happens is our body will send out, our body is constantly whispering.
Yeah.
A lot of times, so we won't pay attention until it starts yelling through the megaphone. But our body often says, like, time to go to bed now. You feel like you're okay. I'm starting to feel tired, but it's too early according to your to-do list.
Right.
And so you think, well, it's 9:00, but look at all the stuff I have left to do. So the kids are in bed, or my partner's, occupied, or, finally I have this window of time that's just for myself and no one needs me. My clients don't need me. So I can do all of this other stuff in front of a screen, which, wakes us up again.
Absolutely.
So in addition to, blocking out those 7 hours of sleep, it's also really important to schedule wind down time that starts at least an hour before.
Yeah.
Preferably 2, but at least 1 hour where you're completely disconnected. Everything's on airplane, and you use that time for reading, for writing, for taking, a relaxing bath, if that's your thing, or some other kind of self-care ritual. I don't do baths, but I love, face masks and using my jade roller and, meditating, things like that, where you're just blocking off that time to prepare yourself for a restful sleep.
Yeah. And I find this is actually the case with a lot of women who are very deeply spiritual, but still they get into these places. So if we're real about it, right, with our masterminders and our community, to really consider what is the transition that you're having from work to downtime, or even if it's not work and it's family to downtime, but what is that transition that's happening? And based on your wisdom around this, what does it look like to be really conscious of having that downtime and then going to bed? And even if we try that for, let's say, 14 days, just to see what the difference is and how it can actually benefit us within the day and long term. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so even with that, can you share a little bit about your thoughts about long term, like what it looks like for us to take care of ourselves now and be a yes to that as a priority to help support us in the long run?
Yeah, absolutely. I think then this is one of the things that I always do with my clients. And it's funny because I just did a session on Friday, and one of the questions I always ask is, what would that look like for you? And a lot of times they think that I want them to say, yeah, I could do that, and I can sense that. Right. I can sense it if it's a yes for me. Yeah. And so I said, no, honestly, like, what would that look like for you? And no, and so that's the first thing is, like, when you're thinking of long-term, if journaling for 30 minutes in the morning is not the best time, then you're probably not that's not a sustainable change.
Right, exactly.
But everyone can find 30 minutes at some point in the day, So a lot of times it's that hour before bed where we can do some of those self-care practices. It's just a matter of putting, really tight boundary around that time and not letting other people interfere, and not letting other, your devices. I mean, really, because information overload is another form of stress. And I think that, even when we are able to, let's face it, it's really hard if you spend all day working and then with, you have very little quality time with your partner. It's really hard to say, okay, I've only seen you for about an hour, but now I'm going off by myself. That can be a struggle. And so maybe it's not a full hour that you take to yourself. Maybe it's 30 minutes that you commit to, but those 30 minutes are yours.
Yeah.
Maybe you take 30 minutes to connect with your partner and then say, okay, I'm going to do my bedtime routine and I'll see you later. If you need me, I'll be in bed. If you'd like to accompany me without your screen, without your device, I'll be there.
Totally.
So it's really looking at, everyone has 15 to 30 minutes that they can block off. And it might look like 15 minutes of meditation in the morning, when you first wake up, when everyone is asleep, just to have that time to call yourself back, all those pieces that you've given away. And that's how you start your day. It might be 20 minutes of journaling. One of my favorite practices is having a worry journal where you write down all the things that you've had on your mind all day, just get them out. And then on the next page, write all the things that you want to get done the next day, get that out so that you go to bed kind of like with a clear slate. Because those thoughts, I should have done that differently. Oh, I need to do that tomorrow. That's a lot of weight to carry to bed. And for anyone who does have trouble sleeping, there's a lot of women, I call it the witching hour. It's the 3 a.m., 4 a.m. window that if someone has trouble staying asleep all night, that's typically when they'll wake up.
That's when I wake up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if you've not unloaded all of that stuff before going to sleep, that's where your brain goes as you're staring at the ceiling, which I don't recommend either. If you happen to wake up consistently, don't stare at the ceiling. Either practice deep breathing on your back or on your side and really focus on your breath. But if that's not enough, then read. Take a break and read, because if not, all of those thoughts will just keep going and going, and it'll feel really just a very anxious, worrisome place to be in. And I've been there, so I speak from experience. I have overcome a lot of these habits, of which I speak. So I know what that feels like. I know
totally.
Yeah.
What are some hormones we should know? Just because they're important to know.
Well, estrogen and progesterone. Cortisol. Sorry, I'm. That's one of those treasure. Oh, okay. Cortisol is a big one for stress. Cortisol actually affects progesterone levels. Cortisol also affects thyroid hormone levels. Mm-hmm. Stress suppresses thyroid function, right, which is something that I think a lot of women don't realize. And in terms of stress, your thyroid is really, it's under attack when you're stressed out, because cortisol acts on, so when you have elevated cortisol levels, then your body, in order to keep up with the demand, will use a master hormone called pregnenolone, and actually does something called the pregnenolone steal. Oh. So it will take pregnenolone to make more cortisol instead of making more progesterone, which is a double whammy, because progesterone is the hormone that kicks in the second half of our cycles that gives us, or that is supposed to give us, that calm, grounded feeling. Yeah. So when we're high, we're stressed out, we're high on cortisol, low on progesterone, then not only are we feeling wired, we also start feeling crunchy and dry and anxious. Also because of progesterone's relationship with a neurotransmitter called GABA. And cortisol also suppresses thyroid function, because when you're stressed out and you go into that survival mode, your thyroid thinks, okay, I have to slow everything down, dial everything down. And And that also affects your sex hormones, your testosterone levels. And there's also something that's produced called thyroid binding globulin. And that basically does what it says. It's a protein that sticks to the free thyroid hormone and makes it inactive. So even if your thyroid tests are coming back normal, it's possible that your elevated cortisol is making your lab results basically false, that your thyroid is not functioning at normal level. So that's another reason why stress is such a... and the other thing, stress raises, since it lowers progesterone, then it changes the relationship of progesterone and estrogen. Mm-hmm. So you end up having an elevated estrogen to progesterone ratio and possible estrogen dominance, and elevated estrogen levels also slow down your thyroid function.
Aha.
Yeah. And the other thing that when you have suppressed thyroid function, I'm going to get into the poop because it's just something
because you have to. I mean,
Yeah. With suppressed thyroid function comes slower bowel movements. A lot of times you won't eliminate once a day, and you need to eliminate once a day to make sure that you're clearing your system of the excess estrogen, the metabolized estrogen from your liver.
Right.
So if you're not doing that, then if you're not having a bowel movement once a day, then your body is reabsorbing the estrogen that it should be eliminating. And so it's kind of it's a bit of a vicious cycle.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are some.
And then, so based on knowing that sleep is one way to kind of allow ourselves to calm our nervous system with stress, what is another thing that'll help even, let's say, the hormonal levels? I know that it may get a bit intricate, but is there one basic foundation thing we can be aware of?
Diet.
Okay.
Diet, for sure.
Tell us some more.
So I know they're everyone's favorites, and I do not advocate for a complete elimination of these foods, because I feel like we've gone from we've basically replaced fear of food for weight gain.
Yes, it's true.
Fear of food for inflammation or chronic disease or whatever, but it's still fear. And so if you try to do anything 100%, including with food, there's always, some kind of backfire. And as someone who had an eating disorder for 15 years, I'm really careful of how I nourish my body. That being said, sugar. Sugar just wreaks havoc on your hormones. Another hormone I should have mentioned, which I'm sure everyone has heard, but they might not think it's a hormone, is insulin.
Right.
Insulin
I didn't know that was a hormone.
Yeah, insulin is a hormone. Right. Yeah. So, sugar, first, its effect on your blood sugar levels. Second, its effect on your microbiome, the balance of gut flora. Third, inflammation, which inflammation is also part of stress, because your immune system is on high alert when it doesn't need to be. They've also found that sugar, for anyone trying to conceive, it's very important to stay away from sugar as like an everyday part of your diet, because they've actually found that it has a direct effect on how the cells of the uterine lining function. Because of something called advanced glycation end products that are formed when we eat sugar, and it can actually make implantation of the embryo more difficult, and something called placental invasion more difficult as well. So for anyone trying to conceive, sugar is a big one to look at. Also diet. Sorry.
I love all the info, Jolinda.
Yeah. So foods that are not organic. Now, I used to eat everything organic, and that in itself was stressful because
it really is.
Yeah. It really is. And so I do not eat 100% organic anymore. Like I said, that 100% rule, when you start getting to 100%, that's perfectionism, and perfectionism causes stress. So, but definitely choose your animal proteins well. It really does matter what your meat eats.
Yeah.
So look for organic, free range, grass-fed, pastured, and that will really eliminate that eliminates excess estrogen coming into your system. That eliminates antibiotics coming into your system and messing up your microbiome, which is a form of stress. And with the fruits and vegetables, being familiar with the dirty dozen,
yes.
Being familiar doesn't mean that you have to have organic apples every single time, but at least okay, I see if I have a choice between organic apples and organic avocados, like there's no reason to get an organic avocado.
Right.
Yeah. Flooding your system with fruits and vegetables. I'm a big fan of crowding out, looking at what can I have, not focusing what I can't. So, all of those colors are phytonutrients and antioxidants that are also going to help your body fight that inflammation and those free radicals, which are a huge form of stress in the body. What's something else in terms of diet? Gluten is often a form of stress. A lot of us are intolerant. We don't realize it. So what I say with gluten is, be mindful of when you eat gluten and how you feel.
How you feel, yeah.
Because if you are bloated, if you experience brain fog, if you see your mood shift, that's all your body saying, as we say in Spain, talk, talk, talk. I don't like that, So maybe it just means having it once in a while. Maybe you don't have to eliminate it completely, but reevaluate your relationship.
Right.
The same with alcohol. And with alcohol, I say, first of all, look at how you're using alcohol. Because if alcohol is is your go-to for disconnecting and winding down, then that's something that needs to be replaced with more supportive practices. Most of us don't need to completely eliminate alcohol, but the first place, the starting point is, how am I using alcohol? And if it's for if it's for reasons of wanting to feel connected or not wanting to feel out, like that's something else that needs to be looked at as well. Sugar, gluten, alcohol, dairy is another one that can cause a lot of stress in the body. And that's something that you can see in your skin, quite frankly. It really breaks my heart when I see women who are spending hundreds of dollars on skincare products, hoping for results when they're eating foods that are just creating inflammation all the time. Acne is an inflammatory condition. If you quell the inflammation, then you'll also help to balance out your skin and get rid of the acne. But if you are, feeding yourself with refined carbs, sugar, and dairy all the time, it doesn't matter what, serum or magic potion you're buying. It's not going to go away.
Totally.
And that's something important to keep in mind. But yeah, dairy, because of its effect on dairy, has something called insulin growth factor 1, IGF-1, and it mimics insulin in the body, and that is one of the reasons why it's actually insulin that it raises your blood sugar. I mean, insulin itself doesn't raise your blood sugar, but the effect of insulin growth factor 1 on your blood sugar creates the flare-ups, the acne flare-ups.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons why dairy is something to stay away from.
I love that.
Or at least evaluate your relationship with dairy.
Right.
Yeah.
Never, not 100% no necessarily. And
no.
you get
yeah.
to.
Yeah.
I do really love the fact that a lot of the times we notice, especially as entrepreneurs, that we get boggled down with this idea of time, right? And so therefore we don't have enough time for all the things. And then we look at these outside external factors to help with us alleviating some of these things. Right? So just like you said around all the products one might use, looking out there for the best ones and spending all this money because it's going to help you with your face. And then realizing though, it's really quite basic, which is a lot of the times things like sleep and food, exercise that can really transform you. And it's these basic things, but we feel like we feed our brain and say we don't have enough time to make ourselves a meal, go for a walk, have enough sleep. So thank you for reflecting that back, because it's actually not that hard if we really think about it.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning exercise, because training too hard is also a form of stress.
I know that too. Yes.
And because I remember when I was younger, I'll be 37. But when I was in my 20s, I always discounted exercise that wasn't, high intensity, high impact, the jumping up and down, sweating all over. But, yoga, Pilates, going on the rebounder, the mini trampoline. Those are huge, especially when you are already under stress. Those are the types of exercises that your body actually needs. Walking, as you mentioned, and I think sometimes you get into this mindset of, well, I don't have time to do, a HIIT workout, or, Soul Cycle or whatever it is, so I'm just going to sit all day because walking doesn't count.
Right.
Or maybe we feel like taking a walk, but we use the excuse of this email is more important, or, this outline for my new group program is more important, when really we know that exercise will stimulate our brains to be even more productive and more creative. And I've noticed that even if I, every day to pick up my son from school, I have to walk up this giant staircase. And if I sprint up that staircase, a lot of times at the top, I'll get some insight or some new idea just from that flow of blood and oxygen. And I'll see things clearly, so that's one of the things that I think really needs to be reconsidered as well. When, exercise really is not about maintaining your weight. Exercise is an amazing way for entrepreneurs to be more productive in the long term, to be more creative, to keep their hormones balanced, and just keep that fresh blood flowing to our brains.
It's a really great place to end on, which is remembering none of this is, we're so programmed to think about all of these things so that we look good in all ways, our weight, our skin, our, all of it. Yeah. And versus what if, because we're also of service from the heart, right? We're here doing all this work to help others as well, that maybe all of these things that we take for granted or we choose to not do, even though we do have the time and space to do it, as a way to be more in alignment, to be in devotion to ourselves. And so thank you for that as a reminder.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I do think that it's ironic that so many coaches and entrepreneurs who are in service to others forget to be in service to themselves first. Yes. Because if we're not, if we're not functioning at top speed, then we can't fulfill our unique missions.
Absolutely.
And this is all, as you said, really basic stuff that we need to not only be aware of, but actually implement in our everyday lives.
Exactly.
Because a lot,
but really go in and do it.
Yeah. And sometimes I have to treat myself as my own client.
Yeah.
Because I see, I see myself slipping. And I have to say, wait a minute. Now, if I were my own client, what would I recommend? And am I doing that? No.
Totally.
So with
right?
kindness and compassion, let's see what needs to be readjusted.
Yes. Compassion. Because like you said, it's not going to be 100%. We're going to ebb and flow and slide a little, and then with love and compassion come back to that place with that foundational system. So
and it's really with love and compassion that those long-lasting changes are made. Cracking the whip over yourself is actually going to keep you in that stressful survival mode and drive you to making those choices that will just perpetuate the vicious cycle. Because no good choices come out of a place of shame. And that's what we do when we bring out our inner critic. We shame ourselves, and we don't deserve that. So
I love that.
Love and compassion.
I love that. No good choices are made through shame. Excellent.
No.
Yeah. Thank you, Jolinda.
Thank you, Sora. It's been my pleasure to be
here. All right,
here.
my loves. I hope you enjoy this as well. Let's see, and let's have a conversation around what are the things that really came through for you and what are the things you desire to implement. All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Sacred Business Podcast with me, Sora Surya-No. If you love the show and desire to know more, check out sorasurya-no.com. I would also so appreciate it if you would leave a love note, aka a review on iTunes. Now, remember, you have the power to create anything. You are able to bring forth beauty, abundance, and grace in your business and life every day while living a life that is wild, free, and calm. You are worthy, divine sister.